Lindsay Trantham. My session candidate number is 030013-0064. And today I'm talking to you guys about the speeches of Ain't I a Woman from Center of Truth and Julia Gillard, leader of the opposition speeches, and analyzing them with my own spoken word and comparing them also. A little background on Sojourner Truth. Her original name was Isabella Baumtree, and changed it due to her Christian faith, because Sojourner Truth is a traveler of truth. Her tone. Now, her tone in this is more like a motherly figure. This is evident in how she starts the speech. She starts the speech with, "Well, children," and by this she uses antidote. She uses I plowed the field, I planted those crops. And so with that, she brings herself into the experience. She uses repetition to get her point across. Her setting is in 1851, different from present day. And as I said, well, children, and she bored out with her mother's grief and selling her children into slavery. But she's strong, with no man can head me, plowing the fields. Her use of I, like I said before, brings in her struggles as an African American and also as a woman, but both put together as her struggles on top of another, on top. And she brings in also anecdotal experiences through her personal experiences and bringing in pathos from her audience, emotional experiences to bring in her struggles. Because slavery ended around 1820s. She was born approximately in the 1797-ish, and so therefore she was in her 20s whenever slavery had ended. She had legality against her master and ended up winning, being the first black woman to win against her master, or any white man in general. And that are some questions that she poses with her ethos. What is right and what is the definition of a woman? Because back then, it was a woman was fragile. She had to be taken care of. As she demonstrates in her speeches, she says, "Look at my arm, look at my strength, look what I have done." And also, this brings in literal aspect with actually look at me for the first time. Look at me as a person. Because before this, no one had looked at me, no one had saw me before. This was all relating to her troubles, her repetition, strong woman. Setting, obviously, diction is going to be different than now. Use of out of kilter, it's still kind of used today, but less common. It's more like out of orthodox, out of usual. The use of carriages is now a novelty due to the automobile industry with Henry Ford and the 1920s, it being an experience where everyone could afford them. And then plowed and planted, gathered into fields, talks about the South and also their dependence on agriculture and, and slave culture as well. Okay, rhetorical elements. Where did your Christ come from? She brings in humor. She gets people on her side with this quote. She says, "God and a woman." She brings in people of Christian faith, the audience, to get them on her side as well. People who were against her now are saying, she's from the Christian faith. Maybe I should listen to this woman. She has a little sass. And then Ain't I a Woman, obviously, with the rhetorical aspects. That's the title of the speech itself. And it's posing the question, what really is the definition of a woman? And we will never be the definition of a man. We can be strong, we can be brilliant. And so now, for a breakdown of creativity, you can reference your little, as Shannara has here, your little booklets. I gave you little references. And I'm going to be Center of Truth in Akron, Ohio in 1851, my little interpretation of spoken word. Okay. Have you heard of the new species female? I prefer to go by fee without the male. Now, I am a woman desperate for recognition and identity. I am lost by knowing exactly where I am going, because I know no one's gonna hold me like a rare gem or polish me like they silver. 'Cause they don't think Miss Baumfree got any. All she is a Negro trying to preach like she has worth. And all I gotta say to you, honey, is hallelujah. Do I need to sprinkle you again with some wisdom? Now, I am tired of men rolling over me like rolling pins in flour, trying to make me flat and one-dimensional. Because I am more than flour waiting to be flattened. Ladies, don't you know you are worthy? Worthy of everything that man next to you has. I have done the labor of 5 hard-working men, and all done gone to the grave. And I am pushing for you, pushing for the bettering of that sun over there. So when the sun shall rise, we shall reveal that we are here, rising like the moon. We are the stars, always shining. And even when our light goes out, we will be here. And even if we shall vanish from your brow, we shall rise again like the heavenly Almighty One. So have y'all heard of the new species, female? And that's my interpretation of, and now I'm going to talk about my interpretation. I used the theme of misogyny as well as Truth did in her speech, talking more about civil rights as well as women's rights, while I just focused on women's rights. I used the metaphor, I'm tired of men rolling over me like rolling pins in flour, like a cooking metaphor back in the days when women were cooks, and that's basically all they did, cooking and sewing, and basically what gender roles were back then. And today, obviously, they have changed with women in the workforce, and obviously now is a better time for women to get their voice out there. Like Truth was expressing in hers, she said, "Ain't I a woman? Can I do something different than ever before?" Rhetorical aspect, she uses "ain't I a woman" multiple times, while I used only 2 rhetorical questions. Have y'all heard of the new species female? Saying that we are here, we are a new army, we are a group of individuals that are coming. And I used it at the end and at the beginning for a linear structure, so I could have my audience think at the beginning and then conclude at the end if they do now know what the new species female is. Religious aspects, as she used hers with humor, I tried to do that as well. Well, hallelujah, the way I say hallelujah. Do I need to sprinkle you again with some wisdom? Truth is an oracle speaker, which means she draws emotions from her audience, and which helps her emote with her style. What really drew me to Truth's speeches were her emotions, her acting, like look at my arm. The whole acting part, the emoting to her audience really drew me towards her, and therefore my goal was to say that women will always be prevalent in the world, obviously. We are still here. And now for Julia Gillard, former Prime Minister of Australia, born in Wales but had dual citizenship. She took away from British ties, and now she's pure 100% Australian. Prime Minister from 2010 to 2013. Gillard's context was more focused than Truth's. Truth's was more broad to her whole audience, while Gillard's was more focused on one person, Tony Abbott. Her structure in saying that his irony in saying that Mr. Slipper's crude comments was misogynistic is also what he was doing to her and to other delegates who were women in Australia's parliament. Rhetorical aspects were all noted that they were focused on Abbott or what he had said in the previous tense, and what he said in the interview with Stavros. Setting is basically present-day 2012 Parliament. Her repetition is focused around misogyny, sexism, and leader of the opposition. Also, some repetition is, oh, there's this thing called sexism, so it brings in her theme more. She's saying this is a reference to Abbott and what he was saying when he finally woke up and said, wow, there is sexism, wow, there is misogyny, when he looked at Slippers, Slippers comments, but not at himself. And then also, I'm offended by all of his comments that he said. She uses I'm offended to put her point across at all the different times he has used offensive terms. Okay. And then now I'm going to say my interpretation of Julia Gillard, and you can reference your booklets if you'd like, or you can watch me. We have rights, but we are still disadvantaged. And may I cite, we have power in our voices. We have power in our voices. Is it every day we must lie and cheat ourselves? We are all suffering from PMS, patriarchal misogyny and sexism in our lives. Is it that we find women strong, smart, and threatening to men? Now flip the situation. The norm is men are strong, smart, and threatening. Now let's discuss staying in the kitchen, getting you a sandwich, being submissive. This is not my dream, but to be your counterpart. I'm not your object, nor your slave. Can I be a strong woman without it being an oxymoron? I'm offended that you hold me to the standard of a child. I'm offended that sexism has a seat at the table of politics while I am off waiting to be seated. It is this that keeps others at the continuous loop of ignorance in society since the beginning of time. It is till this is solved and that minds are changed that we can truly and fully have an equal chance. And so that's my interpretation. And then my interpretation, a repetition in lines 2 through 4. May I cite that we have power in our voices, we have power in our voices, just for emphasis and to state her many citations she put throughout her very formal delegate speech, in which she is in Parliament. So she's not like Sojourner Truth, in which she is just going around saying, look at my muscle. Like, that wouldn't be something that would be polite or even normal. So lines 17 through 19, I'm offended. I use I'm offended just like she did in her speech, using it for emphasis and also for topic. My interpretation rhetorical, can I be a strong woman without it being an oxymoron? Also, this is reference to Abbott, directly to Abbott, saying, can women finally be strong? As he had cited before, topics towards Julia Gillard and other delegates, like ditch the witch and ditch the explicitive. And then line, is it that we think that women are strong, smart, and threatening? Repetition of this. And then in comparison, both use repetition. Truth uses repetition with rhetorical question, while Gillard uses repetition for emphasis, and Gillard uses rhetorical question for her focus. Truth had more of a broad audience in her whole speech, while Gillard had a more target focus of the audience, while also she had a bigger audience due to today's technology and having 2.6 million views on YouTube, as well as Barack Obama praising her for her speech when she was done. Time periods obviously different in diction and structure. Anecdotal both brought themselves into both speeches by saying the pronoun and also expressing with and the mass of women who are and I. Truth had a non-formal style due to probably lack of education in 1851. And Gillard obviously had a more formal style in Parliament. Both were for women's rights, but Sojourner Truth had more of a emphasis on civil rights. She was an oracle speaker, and both drew from pathos and ethos. And Gillard also drew from lothos and logic. And that's my conclusion. Thank you.